program today is entitled Tech Equity, Social Impact Through Access to Technology. And I can tell you it's going to be a lot funnier than that, just from talking to our three guests. Our first guest, our guests are today Nigel Ballard, who's the director of the Personal Telco project, and English. I speak English too, so we've been able to converse. Oso Martin, who's the founder and outreach coordinator for Free Geek, and Arturo Villaseñor is the technology access coordinator for Centro Cultural of Washington County. Now, Arturo is more comfortable speaking to a large group in Spanish, and also as an aid to our Spanish-speaking listeners and viewers. And as an aid to our English-speaking listeners and viewers, we have here Ms. Sonia Trigo, who will be the interpreter for Mr. Villaseñor. So this is something new, and we're looking forward to it. I would like to mention that it would be very gracious and kind of you if you would turn off all of your cell phones and other things that make noise. I'd also like to welcome, I see some tables here that have representatives from the Portland Youth Builders, their computer tech program, and they work with young people to help them learn new job skills. So it's very appropriate, and welcome to you. Now, just a few brief announcements before we get started with our speakers. Next Friday forum on May 13th, Karen Minnis, who's the Speaker of the House of Representatives, will be our guest speaker. And the title of the program is Calling the Vote, Issues Facing the 2005 Oregon Legislature and the Future of Our State. Probably be about a 2-minute talk. And coming up, here we go again, we get to have the Citizen Salons, which we had very successfully last year. They're a fundraising operation for the club, but it's a dinner discussion series with a guest speaker or guest raconteur that the guests at the dinners have an opportunity to converse with. And this first one is coming up on May 14th. It's kicking it off with a special salon because we didn't start them until June last year. This one will be held at the home of Mike and Terry Burton. As you probably know, Mike was the former head of Metro, and he's now provost at Portland State. Now, their special guest raconteur will be Bob Caldwell, who is the editor of the editorial page for the Oregonian. So if you've ever tried to get a letter published and you couldn't, this is an opportunity. If you have something to say about or want to know how it's formed about editorial policy for the Oregonian, this is an opportunity. Plus, it's just very interesting to have a chance to sit around and talk with like-minded people, and the discussions are a lot of fun and very educational. There are still a few seats available for that, and you can purchase it through the club. The tickets are $100 a piece, and there will be roughly 20 more of these salons coming out this summer, or being held this summer, and so you'll be getting further information in the bulletin about that very shortly. Other events coming up are the New Leaders Council Mixer with the Multnomah Bar Association Young Lawyers Section, May 26th from 5 to 7 at Cassidy's Restaurant. And that could be pretty noisy, so you better come and just see what the young lawyers are having to say to our young leaders and find out what's going on out there. For the dinosaurs like myself, I should probably attend. Now, details on all of these events and on how to become a member, which we graciously invite you who are not members to do, you can get all of that information on our website at pdxcityclub.org. You can also find out rebroadcast information, and you can purchase audio, CDs, or videotapes of today's program. And our sponsors this quarter, to whom we're very grateful for underwriting these programs, are Pope and Talbot Incorporated, Providence Health Systems, and Zimmer, Gunsel, and Frasca. And now to our program. Nigel Ballard is the director of Portland Telecommunications Steering Committee, which is a nonprofit organization and is known as the Personal Telco Project. It's a volunteer group dedicated to providing free, high-speed wireless in public areas. And that's how we were able to provide this wireless hotspot in our offices over here on 9th and Washington and in O'Brien Park. So we thank Nigel and his group very much for that. In his day job, he's the wireless director for Matrix Networks, and he draws upon 15 years of experience in the wireless arena, consulting, designing, implementing, and marketing wireless and mobility solutions. He has delivered his expertise globally to numerous internationally renowned clients, including Hewlett-Packard, Microsoft, IBM, and Intel, names you've heard. Next is Oso Martin. He founded Free Geek in the year 2000, and he also volunteers with the City Repair Project and helps out with Portland's annual Earth Day celebration. He graduated from Arizona State University with a BS in architecture. And he practiced architecture for 10 years in Los Angeles and the San Francisco Bay Area before coming to Portland. And we next have Arturo Villaseñor, who is the coordinator of the Access Technology Program of Centro of Washington County. He was born in Mexico and holds a bachelor's degree in mathematics and physics science from the National Polytechnic Institute in Mexico City. He's a Spanish and English teacher in Forest Grove at PCC and Centro Cultural, and a computer instructor for adults through PCC and Centro Cultural. In case anybody has any questions, start thinking of them now about downloading Microsoft System Pack 2, for example. These are the guys who would know. He volunteers in community action, teaching math for GED test and adult literacy. So we have some really sharp people up here. Please welcome them.
Well, good afternoon, and thanks for being here. I recognize a few familiar, and hopefully the rest of you are friendly faces. Now, I landed here from Europe some 5 years ago, and in the 5 years I've been here, people that have come to know and work with me have discovered that I have no sense of direction, I can't cook, I'm very bad at remembering names, etc., etc. We can't be perfect at all things, but there's one technology that I have kind of got a grasp of, and it goes by the name of Wi-Fi. How many people here, just so I know if I'm preaching to the converted, know exactly what Wi-Fi is? It's good exercise, don't be shy. And you're not shy. Okay, so I'm clearly preaching to a converted house. Okay, I represent a non-profit, a 501c3 in Portland, Oregon, called the Personal Telco Project, and you can learn more by going to www.personaltelco.net. What do? Well, when we're not doing our day jobs, we go out to public spaces, restaurants, cafes, bars, and some unlikely locations, and we enable the owners of these locations to put in free Wi-Fi. What that means is that those people that have wireless laptops, and I actually spot one just over there, can move into these locations, open their laptops, associate to our access point, and surf the web for free, which is kind of cool and kind of empowering. Of course, you have to be in the income bracket that affords you a $1,000 laptop, and we'll get to some other routes to access with our other speakers. But for those of us that do have laptops, it's a very cool city to live in. We may have the highest unemployment in the US, but we have more free Wi-Fi than any other city in the US. So, you know, we do something good here. Personal Telco, we have some rules, and the rules are that we don't charge anyone for access, that we don't track anyone, we don't want membership, we don't put annoying pop-ups trying to sell you this, that, and the other. It really is a free ride. And when we started 3-4 years ago, it was kind of a tough sell to go into a coffee shop and say, you know, if you let us put a free node in, we will drive business to your coffee shop. And, you know, they would give us a weird look and say, right, this is going to be one bum with a laptop and a cup of coffee. He'll be there for 8 hours and we'll have to kick him out at the end of the day. And we're like, no, you know, it really doesn't happen that way. And in the 4 years, we've turned skeptics into believers. And a prime example is the World Cup coffee store in Powell's Bookshop on Burnside. Very, very busy coffee shop. Very few available seats. But we managed to persuade them to put a free hotspot in. So now you can read a book, you can have coffee and a bagel, and surf the internet. The The only proviso for that particular coffee shop was laptops typically don't run more than 2 hours without a recharge, and they don't have any power outlets in the coffee shop, so that's how they churn them, which I thought was pretty clever. So our busiest node, the last time I checked, was Pioneer Courthouse Square. So if you have a laptop and you're anywhere in the Pioneer Square area, you open it up and you look for a free network, and there's personal telco. We did the Eco Trust thanks to a generous technology grant from Intel. We have a very ambitious scheme that's just commencing thanks to an even more generous grant from the Maya Memorial Trust here in town. This is the Mississippi Historic Retail District. I don't know if any of you have been there. It's really a very interesting area. I would say it's becoming gentrified, be that good, be that bad. It's certainly a great place to go and eat and drink coffee and window shop now. And using the grant money, as well as some equipment donations from Intel, we intend to light the entire area up with free Wi-Fi. So whether you live there, work there, go to school there, or just visit, you'll be able to surf the internet for free. That's really our biggest project this year. We have some other ones. We're trying to cover the waterfront, desperately trying to cover the waterfront of Portland. Basically, Tom McCall Park has so many interesting things going on. Every time we get really close to a deal with a landlord and a building, something happens. So if somebody out there owns a building on the waterfront, come see me afterwards. So that's basically what Personal Telco does. We don't make any money. It's purely a volunteer effort. We're always looking for more people. We do it because it's cool and it's empowering. We'd like very much to move further out of the Pearl District. I mean, we have a number of hotspots in the Pearl District, but everyone seems to own a Lexus or a BMW in the Pearl District, so really they can afford to, surf the internet on their own without me providing them free access. Where we're really needed is in North Portland, where the demographic is somewhat different. The amount of people that can afford high-speed internet are a lot less than in the Pearl District, as a good example. And so we're looking for more volunteers and more locations where we can do our good work, if you can put it that way, into the North Portland area. So again, if you know of any coffee shops or community centers, et cetera, we'd really like to hear from you. The City of Portland has developed a committee, of which I am pleased and I guess proud to be a member of. It's called Portland Unwired, and we intend very shortly to issue an RFP to build a citywide Wi-Fi network. I should point out now that while I'm not in a position to give away any specifics about the RFP, I will tell you it will not cost the taxpayers a penny. And that's the normal question that people ask. So we will have a citywide network very soon, and I'm really excited about that. A number of other cities have them. Many other cities are discussing them. We as Portland need one to attract new businesses into the many vacant offices we have in downtown Portland. Now, my 10 minutes are probably almost up. Oh, I have all the time in the world, she says. So that's not what she said, but sure. So here's a thing that gets raised by many journalists. So I sit in front of a camera or in front of a microphone or in front of a journalist's sketch pad, and I pontificate about all this free wireless and laptops and roaming around Portland and how cool and empowering and how wonderful it is that we give the Google interface to anyone, because that's really where the wealth of information is. If you have easy access to a fast internet connection, you bring up the Google interface and you ask it, who is William Shakespeare? Who was God? Whatever. A gazillion pages will come up, more information than you can shake a big stick at. So, and many of us here take it for granted, the ease with which we can swing around in our Herman Miller chairs and bring up the Google interface. But believe me, there are many people 35 blocks north of here who don't have such ready access to it. And what it does, it creates an even greater digital divide, because the ease with which you and I can access information means that whatever social information curve there is, we race ahead of it, and those that don't have the privilege fall behind. So a cool technology can work for good and evil, I guess. So a journalist will say to me, okay, so you have all these hotspots and you're going to cover this big cloud in North Portland. That's all well and good, but not everyone can afford a $1,000 wireless laptop. To which my normal retort is, but you can just buy a $29 wireless adapter that plugs in the back of any standard desktop computer, and as long as you reside within the cloud of free wireless, you can immediately get your computer on the internet. And they retort once more, well, what happens if you can't afford a desktop computer? And I'm very pleased that I live in a town where I actually have an answer to that, and it's Free Geek. And our next speaker will carry on from where I left off. I thank you for your time.
Hi. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. I am the founder and outreach coordinator of Free Geek. We are a nonprofit computer reuse and recycling center in Southeast Portland. I am an accidental computer electronics recycler. I started out as a volunteer with the City Repair Project in 1998, and we were doing public space advocacy. It was the one technically savvy member of the group, and every time a member of the community wanted to donate something to the organization, it was often an old computer, and they ended up being a giant pile in my dining room. Well, one day I thought to myself, I really should fix these computers up and get them out to activists so they have access to the web and they have access to email. And based on the type of community work that I was doing with City Repair, I felt fairly strongly that a volunteer service model could be put together that would allow us to do this project in a very cost-effective way. So at the beginning, we had some really great and lucky things happen for us. First, Jim Diebel, the founder of Teleport, which at the time was the largest internet service provider in the Northwest, had enough vision to grant us $35,000 to give us enough to test the proof of concept, to go out there and try it out and see if it would work. And the other great thing that happened was with Jim's funding, we were able to do some public outreach at the 2000 Earth Day celebration, where we actually didn't have an organization at that point. We had a website, and we had some brochures, and we had some t-shirts, and we had an idea. And we put out a couple of sign-up sheets and asked people to sign up if you wanted to earn a computer and sign up if you wanted to help out. About 35 people signed up for a free computer, but 75 people signed up to help out. And we sort of thought we were onto something here. So in less than a year, that pile of 7 or 8 computers in my dining room grew to 20,000. And it is, the Free Geek is really, it's a junk pile of dreams. If you fill a computer or a warehouse full of old computers, Geek volunteers will come out of the woodwork to play with them. And they did. We have literally thousands of volunteers that have put in hundreds of thousands of hours of community service time to help us do this. So how does it all work? We operate a recycling center, which is sort of the obvious thing that we have out there. It's the public and small business individuals are dropping off their old computers every day, and we are going to sort and separate those into the reusable and the recyclable, and get the reusable out into the community and the recyclable recovered in an environmentally responsible way. The way that we do all of this is with two major programs. We have our adoption program, where members of the community come down, they do a 24-hour work trade, doing some basic tasks in our recycling program. They do sort and separation, component testing, and computer deconstruction. And in exchange for those 24 hours, we give them a free computer, a class on how to use it, and a year of technical support, and access to a discounted dial-up ISP. The way that we manufacture the computers for the folks in the adoption program is our build program, which is another program open to the public. And members of the public come down, and for free, we will teach you how to build computers. The curriculum is to build 6 computers. The first 5 computers go to the folks in all of the other programs, and that 6th computer is yours to keep as a reward for finishing the class. So it's free computers for everyone. Those computers that we put out are loaded with open source software, specifically Linux. It's crucial to our operation to use open source software. We avoid all licensing fees, and the open source software works more efficiently. And so we were able to put a fully functioning modern operating system on a slightly older computer and have it perform just as well as a new computer. And open source and Linux makes that possible. Because we use open source, we can also modify and change our software. So we have another program called Coding, which allows basically underemployed and unemployed software engineers to come and develop software for Free Geek. And we developed databases, we've modified our distribution, we use that information to get feedback from the users and modify the computer so that each generation the computers are better based on the input from the people that are actually using them. Those three programs, or those two computer-generating programs, the recycling and the adoption and build, just generate way more computers than we actually need for those programs. So we were able to grant hardware to nonprofits. And any nonprofit in the area can go to our website and submit an application for a hardware grant, and chances are we will meet that within a month, and we do anywhere between 35 and 50 computers a month just to nonprofits. We are able to take the programs that we have and fine-tune them for other groups to use as a resource. We have Computers for Kids, which takes both the adoption and build programs and compresses them down into a shorter time frame and allows mentored at-risk youth programs to come through and participate, still get a computer at the end, and work in a way to really empower the kids and get them a computer at the same time, but do it in a context and in a time frame that works for the at-risk youth programs. We are also sending computers to South America and to Africa. We are working with the World Computer Exchange and Mercy Corps and SchoolNet Africa, and I've sent hundreds and hundreds of computers around the world so far. Some other fun facts about Free Geek: we are actually a worker collective. There are 12 employees, and we do everything with consensus. It's a very democratic organization, and the volunteers and the staff have opportunities to guide the organization together through a community council that uses a consensus process as well. We are now in 15,000 square feet, a 300% growth since we started. About 4,500 volunteers signed up, 350 are active at any given time. 207,000 gizmos have been donated over the last 4.5 years. We put 35,000 of them back into reuse and recycled the materials out of 102,000 of them, equal to about 600 tons. And that's copper, aluminum, gold, all the precious metals, and leaded glass and steel and plastic, all kept from the landfills. There are Free Geeks sprouting up all over the country now. Little grassroots operations are taking what we do, which we share in the spirit of open source. We don't license it, we don't have a franchise fee. It's just, we've got information here, you can have it. You can start your own Free Geek. So there is a Free Geek in South Bend, Indiana, they're known as Free Geek Michiana. There's a Free Geek in Pennsylvania, in Ephrata, Pennsylvania, which is in Amish country just outside of Lancaster County. We visited them in the spring of last year, and there was literally a horse and buggy parked out front next to the pile of computers. It was pretty amazing. There's now a Free Geek starting up in Olympia, Washington. There's a Free Geek starting up soon in Chicago, and a Free Geek Columbus, Ohio, that is also in its starting phases. And I'm going to be wrapping up here, so just to avoid these questions at the end, we're located at 1731 Southeast 10th Avenue. We're open from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Tuesday through Saturday. Tours are available every day that we're open at noon and 6. We accept anything computer-related. Doesn't matter how old it is, how functional it is, how dirty it is, we'll take it. There is, however, a $10 fee for all monitors, regardless of their condition. For more information, you should check out our website at www.freegeek.org, and thank you very much for your time.
Hi everyone, from this point, just Spanish for me. He querido empezar mi reflexión acerca del Centro Cultural con las palabras que describen su misión. Satisfacer las necesidades básicas de la comunidad latina, fomentar su desarrollo económico y social, incrementar la conciencia cultural y el entendimiento entre los diversos grupos de la región.
I wanted to start my reflection about Centro Cultural with a couple of words that describe our mission. The first thing is that we satisfy the basic needs of the Latino community by helping to promote, increase, and to develop cultural awareness economically and socially, and by the training we provide to the diverse groups within the region.
Esa fue la idea de los fundadores del Centro Cultural que sembraron en buena tierra hace más de 30 años. Ellos quienes pensaron en esas palabras Fueron un grupo de personas que apenas sabían leer y escribir en español. Pero lo que sabían muy bien era que había sueños, que valía pena luchar por ellos y que también sabían que había que trabajar muy, muy duro para conseguirlos. Y trabajaron muy duro y lo lograron. Y hoy, aunque la mayoría de ellos ya se fue, no está con nosotros, el Centro Cultural sigue ahí desde 1972.
The idea was planted in good soil by the founders of Centro Cultural more than 30 years ago. It was they who had those words, those thoughts of what they wanted to accomplish. They were a group of people who did not know how to read or write very well, but what they did know was how to dream. At the same time, they understood what it meant to work very hard, and so their project could become a reality. They worked hard and they achieved it. Today, even though a majority of them have left Centro Cultural, or the Centro, as we like to call it, it continues to exist since the year of 1972.
Más de 30 años después, las mismas carencias y los mismos retos que impulsaron la creación del Centro Cultural siguen existiendo. Y en ocasiones son muy difíciles de superar como en el pasado. Hoy en día son más difíciles porque en el pasado lo más importante era aprender a hablar inglés. Hoy en día la barrera del idioma hay que añadir la barrera de la tecnología.
More than 30 years ago, or 30 years later, these same types of deficiencies that propelled the creation of Centro continues to exist. And on occasions, they are even more difficult to overcome than they were in the past, such as the importance of learning English. Today, along with the barrier of learning English, we add to it the learning of technology as well.
Es en esta área donde el Centro Cultural ha puesto buena parte de sus esfuerzos, proveyendo educación en el campo de la computación, a domicilio inclusive, con clases de computación e internet todo el año, de inglés y ESL con computadoras, y justamente el mes pasado con clases a través de la internet desde una universidad en la ciudad en México.
It is in this area that Centro Cultural has put a good part of its efforts, providing education in the field of computers with study programs that include computer classes at home and computer classes that include internet and are done throughout the whole year. Classes for English as a second language, or ESL as it is called, is taught through the computer, including other types of classes coming all the way from the University of Mexico through the internet.
Todo esto es posible gracias a la colaboración de mucha gente, muchos de ellos voluntarios, sin los cuales no se podría, debido a lo limitado de los recursos, ayudar a tantos como se desearía. No obstante, siempre hace falta recursos y ayuda de todos los tipos, materiales y humanos. La tarea de compartir conocimientos y poner ciertos recursos, como la tecnología al alcance de quien los necesita, requiere mucho esfuerzo.
Thanks to the collaboration of a lot of people and the many of them who are volunteers, all of this has become possible. But due to the limited resources, we are not helping as many people as we would like. Nevertheless, we continue to need help with all kinds of resources, more material, more human effort, so as to continue with our task, the task of sharing knowledge and putting needed resources, such as technology, at the reach of all those who need it.
Puede parecernos a muchos que el manejar una computadora no sea algo muy difícil. Para alguien que ha estudiado los últimos 12 años de su vida, que conoce las computadoras desde que era niño y que forman parte de su vida diaria, como el teléfono o la televisión.
For a lot of us, it appears that the managing of a computer is not something very difficult. That's to say, for someone who for the last 12 years has had a formal education as children and who have had computer awareness, because computers were a daily part of their life, such as the telephone or television.
Les pido que se imaginen que apenas saben leer y escribir, que buena parte de su vida han trabajado jornada tras jornada en empleos realmente agotadores y que no saben nada de la internet y que nunca han escuchado del correo electrónico o los virus informáticos.
I'm asking you also to imagine that you barely know how to read or to write, because the majority of your life you've spent working day after day in back-breaking, exhaustive work. You have not had the time to know anything about internet, have not even heard about electronic mail, let alone about an information virus.
Imaginen también que no ignoramos la importancia de manejar una computadora, pero que para poder hacerlo se tiene que hacer a un lado tiempo de descanso y de convivencia con la familia y por supuesto falta de dinero.
Imagine once again that I know about the importance of understanding the computer. I'm not ignoring it, but that in order to do it, I have to set aside some time for rest, time for the family, and even if I have all of that, I still need money.
Imaginemos también que nunca hemos sostenido en la mano un ratón y imaginemos que todo cuanto aparece en la pantalla del ordenador es nuevo. Y en ocasiones en un idioma que apenas se comprende o que tal vez no se entienda en absoluto.
Let us also imagine that our hand has never before held a mouse, and everything that we see on the screen of the computer is brand new to us. And the language is something you barely understand, and maybe not understand at all.
Si ustedes lo pueden imaginar, acaban de mirar por un momento la realidad de miles de personas en nuestra comunidad. Miles que nunca antes se habían enfrentado a una computadora, pero que también saben que nunca es demasiado tarde para aprender a manejarla y que hoy por hoy, a pesar de muchos actores en contra, acuden a lugares como el Centro Cultural a aprender.
If you can imagine all of this for one brief moment, you have imagined the reality of thousands of Latinos who live within our community. Thousands who have never sat in front of a computer, but at the same time, knowing that it is never too late to learn. Day by day, even though they encounter other obstacles, they continue to come to Centro Cultural to learn.
Ser parte de este esfuerzo tiene varias recompensas y la primera de ellas es mirar la satisfacción de quien venciendo sus temores y sobrepone sus faltas de experiencia, de tiempo, de dinero, se da cuenta de que sí es posible, sí se puede y de que el esfuerzo bien vale la pena.
To be a part of this effort has certain compensations. The first one is the satisfaction of seeing these people conquer their fears and that they continue to go beyond themselves with continual practice. And in the end, they find out that the effort was well worth it.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Wow, I don't know how many of you knew all of this was available out there, but what outstanding programs. We now come to the question-answer part of our program, and only City Club members are allowed to ask questions. Questions are typically not comments, and they are typically asked in 30 seconds or less, if you'd be so kind. Our first question will be asked by our board host today, who is Chris Smith, and Chris is the lead internet technologist for the Xerox Office Group. He's a member of the Board of Governors and has been a City Club member since 1991, and he chairs the Advocacy and Awareness Committee. Chris?
Thank you, Corleen. I'm impressed by the fact that our community has spawned such a variety of nonprofit organizations that have made access to technology core to their mission. City Club is a nonprofit, and we understand the challenges of the nonprofit world, and one of those, of course, is finance. I'd like to understand how each of your organizations has or gathers the financial resources or what the financial flows are that allow you to accomplish your mission.
We work down the table. Okay. Well, personal telco, we actually have no money in the bank, and our pro bono lawyer is hunting me down as I speak for all the money that we owe him for getting us our non-profit status. What normally happens is it's the generous donations of individuals. A classic example is yesterday I encountered an Intel employee who I keep encountering at our free nodes downtown. I walk into one of our coffee shops and there he is sat in the corner with his Intel laptop tapping away. And I said, hey, you know, you always seem to be here. And he said, well, why do I want to drive all the way out on 26 to check my email when you guys have, you know, provided me the resources locally? And, oh, I'd like to write you a personal check for $100, which he did. So That's the only way we get money, and from our recent grant donation from the Maya Memorial Trust.
Free Geek is almost self-funding at this point. We are about 90% self-generating funds. We operate a thrift store where we are selling off the equipment that we have just simply too much of, or is too old for our giveaway programs. It is still good functional equipment, so we want to get it back out into circulation rather than recycle it. We are selling the recovered materials, gold, copper, aluminum, and stainless steel being the real money makers there, which that provides enough to pay our rent right there. We also have just the monitor fee structure. Most of that money goes back out the door to handle the monitor processing, and so that program sort of self-funds itself. And then the community, the general public, drops off computers. They pay that $10 monitor fee, and almost every person gives us about $10 in a donation on top of that. It's about a 1-to-1 ratio, and that's a very significant stream of income. We have gotten grants in the past. We've gotten a $40,000 grant from the DEQ, actually $60,000. We had over 2 grants, and nearly $200,000 from the Maya Memorial Trust over 2 years in 2003 and 2004. But the real purpose of that grant was to make us self-sustaining, to help us grow the program so our volume would be high enough that we could actually support ourselves, and we are very, very close to achieving that goal.
Centro Cultural recibe fuentes de varios fondos de varias fuentes.
Centro Cultural happens to receive different funds from different places.
La mayor parte, casi el 50%, proviene de fundaciones.
The 50% of it, which is the majority of it, comes from foundations.
Microsoft, Intel,
Microsoft, Intel,
etc.
etc.
Otra buena parte, casi una tercera parte, proviene de fondos federales.
A third part of it comes from federal funding.
Y otras partes muy pequeñas provienen de donaciones personales.
The smaller portion of it comes from personal donations.
Cuotas por algún servicio.
And money that we get paid for our services.
Y también tenemos entradas por parte de United Way.
We also have United Way that also gives to us.
Básicamente es la forma en que el centro trabaja.
Basically, this is the way that Centro Cultural works.
Bill Savage, City Club member. Just a quick question. Well, first of all, I'm very excited to hear about all these programs. A quick question for Nigel. How come you can provide free access to the internet through Wi-Fi, but it's free when I need to pay X zillion dollars a month to hook up?
Well, that's a good question. When I say there's no such thing as a free lunch, you get the lunch for free, but the coffee shop or the bar that is hosting the node actually has to buy the access point, which is typically $70, and he or she has to buy the DSL circuit from an internet, a local ISP that approves of giving away the internet, and actually most ISPs don't approve of it, so we specifically recommend those that do. And in fact, the City Club node is donated, the bandwidth is donated in total by a local Brian from SawNet, a local ISP, who basically they write a check from here to eternity to give away an internet circuit so you and I can check the web for free. But yeah, it's free for you, but the location that hosts the node, I always tell them, use it as part of your advertising budget. You know, write it off as good advertising, because if you put a node up, people really will come and visit you that wouldn't have come otherwise.
I'm Bob Geary, club member. I have a question for Señor Villaseñor. ¿Cuántos estudiantes tiene usted? How many students are there in your program?
Thank you for speaking Spanish. Aproximadamente al año, desde hace 2, tenemos un promedio de 1,600 personas.
Approximately, we have about 1,500 students,
Aproximadamente.
more or less.
David Poole, City Club member. Thanks for coming. It's great to have some local on-the-ground technical wizards here. I wonder if I could pose a question about our city, actually, the city of Portland. Their existing IT strategic business plan refers to, quote, Microsoft products and pricing strategies that are increasingly seen as abusive. But it goes on to say that the trend towards open source may be short-lived. I think this was reflected in their February requirement that all potential software developers, quote, demonstrate an ability to obtain proficiency with new releases of product offerings from Microsoft. So my question is, first, do you agree with the city that the open source movement may be short-lived? And second, whether you think the ability to develop proficiency with new Microsoft products is a fair or indeed a wise selection criteria for the city's software contractors.
Shall we answer that in turn? I can speak for personal telco in as much as that we try and use open source tools wherever possible. A, because we don't have any money, and B, because the aging ex-Multnomah library computers that the city generously donates to us don't have the horsepower to run the latest Microsoft software, but they, as Oso has already said, run open source Linux very nicely indeed. We don't have the money to buy the software. We don't have the money to license it down the road. And being open source means that our volunteers, many of which are Linux hackers, can bend the software whichever way they want, and we get it to do some pretty cool things without having to pay Bill or Melinda or anyone else lots and lots of money. Me personally, I think there's a place for both. I run a laptop which runs Windows XP, and it runs really well, and I don't have the time nor the inclination to learn how to run Linux on it, although I probably should. So I'll get shot by my members for saying that. But Oso?
I find it somewhat surprising that anyone would make a statement like that open source is sort of like a trend that's reaching the end of its useful life. It's been growing by leaps and bounds since it started just barely over 10 years ago. It hit a graphical user interface not too long ago, and it's an amazing tool, and it's an amazing resource, and governments around the world are converting. I mean, it's being thwarted at every turn by folks with a vested interest in certain proprietary software, which will remain nameless, but that comment just like doesn't make any sense that they're saying that open source is on the way down and you got to learn Microsoft. It sounds like somebody who's got a job skill set in Microsoft products who's trying to work on job security. And I would say that open source is the future, and that governments and government entities should be using open source and not wasting our good tax dollars on licensing software. They should be using software.
Well, it's a little bit unusual for a board host to respond to a question, but I think my day job gives me some qualifications. So I am the technical architect for the Xerox Office Products website, and we have the freedom, indeed the duty, to use the best set of tools to deliver our information to our customers. And we run our website on a combination of Linux, operating system, Apache web server, and Perl programming language, all of which are open source, and which we believe provide a more reliable, more cost-effective, and higher quality experience for our customers. So, in a market situation, we have made the choice for open source. Open source is not going away.
So did Arturo understand the question?
Yes, I think so. Pero quisiera que me repitiera la última parte para contestarla.
¿A cuál parte?
La parte final en que preguntaba acerca de los programas.
Would you please repeat the question that you had about the program?
Which program?
¿A cuál programa?
El tipo de software que se está.
The type of software that you mentioned.
That's a long question.
Yeah, I mean, the quote directly from the RFP was that software developers must demonstrate an ability to obtain proficiency with new releases of product offerings from Microsoft. So just broadly, Microsoft product releases, just kind of adopting.
Bueno, la pregunta es muy interesante
The question is very interesting
porque los estudiantes del Centro Cultural lo primero que aprenden a usar
because the students at Centro Cultural, the very first thing that they learn
son
to
programas con
use,
licencia.
is
Son-
how to get their license.
Pero cuando tratamos de que la gente compre una computadora, el costo de las licencias puede ser muy elevado.
When we try to get them computers, the cost of the computer might be very elevated,
Debido a la licencia.
and that's because of the license.
Y hemos estado empezando a dar computadoras reconstruidas con programas de open source, justamente.
So we've been thinking about getting computers that already have been constructed,
Computadoras reconstruidas
that have been reconstructed already
con programas de open source.
with the programs that already have an open source to them.
Porque de esta manera
And then this way,
podemos tener más computadoras
we can have more computers
para más gente
for more people
sin problemas.
without any more problems.
Problemas de licencias y de uso.
Problems such as I mentioned right now about the license.
De esta manera más gente puede disfrutar de una computadora.
And then more people can enjoy the computer that way.
No creo que vaya a morir los tipos de programas de open source.
I don't believe that open source is going to die very quickly.
As someone who has recently had some computer problems at home and have been without internet at home for a week, which seems like an eternity, I've realized how much I rely on technology to get information, and I'm still able to log on at work, but just not able to do this on my own time. I was wondering if you could share some concrete examples of how your different programs have changed people's lives. And I understand how access to technology has changed my life, but I wonder for these new users, people who've never used a computer before, if you can tell us some concrete stories about how their lives have been transformed.
Okay, well, working down the table again, I guess the most extreme example that relates to personal telco is that we have a member stroke user who's actually homeless. He lives under assorted bridges in downtown Portland. He has a very aging Toshiba laptop that weighs about 9 or 10 pounds. And thanks to the city of Portland having so many these little fairy lights around the trees and plants and shrubs downtown, that there are these power outlets all around that are turned on 24/7. So while his laptop doesn't have much battery life in it, it enables him to plug into these various ports, and we as taxpayers, pay for that. And I think we should gratefully pay for a little bit of internet access for this young man. But he hooks in and gets whatever information he needs and does whatever he needs to do on the internet. And short of going to the Multnomah Library, there would be no other easy way for him to do it. The library, of course, is only open finite hours. Not everyone is comfortable working there, and sometimes there's quite a long wait to get on a computer. So that's an extreme example, but it's really the only one that comes to mind. By putting these free nodes all around the town, it's not so much life-changing as just adding convenience to people's lives. We've been berating Microsoft here. They were one of the first companies that put in a big Wi-Fi network at Redmond because it's such a big campus. And I think I read that they'd gained an extra productivity of about 50 to 55 minutes a day out of each employee, because when you move from building to building and room to room, you stay constantly connected, so that important email that hits you there and then, and you can respond to it and be done with it. When we're in a disconnected world, things happen slower. Oh, I'll get to it when I get home at night, et cetera, et cetera. And the world is a fast-moving place. So by Personal Telco and other organizations putting access points all over the place, it enables people to do business at many other locations, including the big building down in Salem, Oso?
That's true. I don't have a very specific story, but the very interesting thing that's happened at Free Geek is we've been giving away Linux computers for 5 years now, and we've always been told by folks looking in from the outside and not quite understanding what it is we're doing that you cannot give Linux computers to people who've never used computers before. It's the type of computer you don't give to your grandmother because you don't want the tech support problems. And that is simply, in this day and age, untrue. The computers are very, very sophisticated, and the technical support calls that we get tend to be now, how do I modify my computer? We are teaching people how to download software, how to download things they want to use. And amazingly enough, we actually got a request, and this is a fairly geeky thing, but we actually have an end user that wanted to know how to recompile their kernel to improve the performance of their computer. And that is something that we wouldn't recommend they do with their computer because it takes more computing power than we're able to give them to actually do that. But the fact that somebody who'd only received a computer a few weeks before from us had done enough research on the internet with his new computer that he was ready to really leap out there and take control of the technology in his life. And I was just completely blown away at the level of empowerment that Linux gives to people. You don't have to accept how the computer is. You can decide to change it and learn and change it for yourself.
La pregunta es muy interesante porque en el Centro Cultural hemos visto cómo mucha gente podría dar muchos ejemplos de cómo cambia la vida conocer el manejo de una computadora.
It's a very interesting question because at Centro Cultural we can give you a lot of examples of people's lives and how they've been changed after they've learned how to use the computer.
Es un medio importante, para comunicar gente,
It's very important so we can communicate with other people.
no de manera local, sino de un país a otro.
And I'm not just talking about locally, I'm talking about other countries as well.
Mucha gente que ha pasado por el centro tiene familias en México, Chile, Argentina.
A lot of people who come to Centro Cultural have families like in Mexico, Chile, Argentina,
Y la oportunidad de ligarlas a través de la computadora
and their opportunity to connect with them is through the computer.
cambia la forma de ver la vida.
It changes the way that you see life when you do this.
De una manera más práctica también,
It's a practical way as well.
todos aquí sabemos usar computadoras,
I believe everyone here knows how to use the computer.
hacemos operaciones bancarias, pagamos servicios,
We do our banking through it and we pay other services as well.
buscamos información,
And we receive more information.
hablamos inglés.
We learn to speak English.
Para alguien que no habla inglés,
And for someone who doesn't speak English,
una computadora es un medio inmediato
a computer is something that is very necessary
para establecer comunicación,
so that you can continue to communicate,
para hacer pagos
to make your payments,
y en fin, todo lo que damos por sentado.
and everything that we want placed in its place.
Finalmente quisiera agregar,
Finally, I did want to add one other thing.
hoy en día en muchos lugares,
Today, in a lot of places,
y lo hemos visto con trabajadores del Centro Cultural,
and we've seen it also with the workers there at Centro Cultural,
si un empleador sabe que alguien sabe usar la computadora,
if an employer knows how to use the computer,
lo hemos visto muchas veces,
we've seen it very, very many times.
le mejoran el sueldo.
You know, they raise your salary once you know how to do that.
Así que la gente sabe que si sabe manejar una computadora,
So then we see people that learn or know how to use the computer.
saben que es un medio para alcanzar un mejor nivel económico.
They know that economically their pay is going to go higher if they have this knowledge behind them.
Así que el impacto es directo.
I think that impact is direct.
Marilyn Albers, City Club member. I've been involved in high tech since the 70s, so 30-some years. And while the economic divide has been addressed today, in my experience, there's also a gender divide and an age divide in terms of comfort with technology. My question is to Mr. Martin and Mr. V. Thank you. What are your organizations doing to address the gender and the age divide in high tech?
Free Geek doesn't do anything specifically other than try to be open to everyone and be a welcoming place. We have a third of our staff is female, which is a pretty good ratio for computer tech group, we have all ages. I mean, we have all the way down to 12 and 11-year-olds, one of which is a software genius, who's literally teaching guys who are 3 times his age, and they are just in awe of his skills. And then the opposite end of the spectrum, we have seniors coming to us from different senior placement programs to get folks job skills and job skills training. And the whole point is that what we have, we share, and it's open to anybody. There's no economic, no demographic information that we collect from folks. We just want people to come down and participate, because we are going to get energy from people, and then in exchange for that, we're going to give them this thing that we do. And so, you know, our little saying is, you know, if Bill Gates wants to come down and give 24 hours to get himself a free Linux computer, we will let him do that. And he can spend some time in receiving and in recycling and earn himself a computer, and we're okay with that, because it's really about getting people to come together and work together and just making it as open as possible.
Quisiera responder esta pregunta de 2 puntos diferentes. El primero tiene que ver con las edades.
I wanted to answer this question talking about 2 points. The very first one that I'm going to talk about is about the age.
Las nuevas generaciones de latinos saben cómo manejar una computadora.
The generation of Hispanics that we have right now, some of them do know how to handle the computer.
Los hijos saben muchas veces mejor cómo usar una que los padres.
And of course, their children know better how to use it than their parents.
Así que hay una barrera en la familia.
So we can say that we have a variation, a wide variation within the family.
Muchas veces los padres se acercan al centro a aprender a manejar computadoras para estar junto a sus hijos.
A lot of the times, too, the parents come to Centro Cultural to learn how to use the computer, and at the same time, they are there close to their children
Para saber qué están haciendo con las computadoras.
in order to find out what it is that they are doing with the computer.
E incluso en su momento ayudarlos.
And also, at that same moment, they're there to help them.
Así que esto ayuda a unir más las generaciones.
So then this actually helps to unite both generations.
En lo que respecta a las diferencias de sexo o de género,
Talking about gender, talking about the sex,
no hay problemas, no hay desigualdad en general. Yo no lo he visto que lo haya.
there isn't any kind of problem, nothing that is unequal, we can say, or at least I've not seen it.
En la comunidad latina, tanto hombres como mujeres trabajan por igual.
In the Latino community, men as well as women all work the same.
En ocasiones el grupo es solamente de hombres,
Sometimes on occasion you can find just men working,
otras veces solamente mujeres.
and then sometimes just the women.
Y finalmente grupos mezclados.
And then finally at the end you can see a mixture of both.
We have time for just one more question. Sorry, Kurt.
Hi, Dan Findley, City Club member. First of all, question, we've been talking an awful lot about open source and talking about operating systems and server operating systems, but I haven't heard anybody say too much about the availability of productivity tools that would be the equivalent of Word and Excel and so forth that are open source, things like OpenOffice and StarOffice. I'd like someone to comment on that. And the other question is, we're talking about Nigel having the Google interface staring you in the face so that you can look up information. What's the progress being made on lighting up the libraries in the Multnomah County Library System and giving people access to that huge database of really, really incredibly rich material within the library's database?
Well, very briefly, I hope when the RFP appears, there will be something favorable relating to the Multnomah Library System and access. As for putting Wi-Fi in the libraries, I understand there was an issue that may not have been resolved yet about censorship, that some government department in Washington, some brainiac inside the Beltway was requiring that the library actually censor what people do and where they go. We as personal Telco don't believe that's right, and I believe that people within Multnomah County Library System don't believe that's right either. It's kind of all or nothing, and so that's where we are with the library system. Regarding StarOffice, OSO is much better positioned to answer that than I am.
Yeah, on the computers that are available with open source generally come as a distribution with a full suite of software. We have computers that are provided with Open Office, which is the free version of Star Office, but it is compatible with Microsoft Word for XP and on back. You can read and write .doc, .xls, .ppt files. I can receive a file from somebody over the internet, edit it, send it back to them, and they have no idea I touched it with a Linux computer. Most file formats out there are universal. If you are using proprietary software for your data, you should think about switching, because when that company goes under, they're going to take your data with them. And open source data is always going to be accessible by you for a reasonable amount of money from now until forever. So from a productivity standpoint, I mean, we've been running our business for 5 years on open source, and I haven't missed Microsoft one day of that.
Solo un pequeño comentario al respecto.
Just a small comment.
Cuando manejas una computadora por primera vez
When you, first of all, learn how to use the computer
y te enfrentas a programas sin licencia como open source,
and you confront yourself with some of these sensors as mentioned here,
no tienes mucha manera de comparar ambos.
you don't really have any other way to compare them
De todos modos es nuevo.
because all of it for you at that point is new.
Así que como usuarios no hay gran diferencia.
So in that way, we can say that there's not a very big difference.
Well, what valuable resources these three are for the community, and they all have day jobs and probably night jobs as well, I think, especially in Arturo's case. In any case, next week, Karen Minnis and what to do about what's going on in the state, but right now, please let's thank these gentlemen for all of their efforts. And we are adjourned.